Taylor up on the hill with Sovereign Harmony Astrology. We're going to do the astrology for the week of April 12th to the 18th. Today is Sunday, April 12th, and we're coming off a pretty big day a few days ago on April 9th. That is when Mars entered Aries, its home, and when Mercury exited its shadow. It had been in its shadow period for about 2 months. It did its retrograde in Pisces. So it was in Pisces for a good 2-month period, a little bit more. And now it's out of that shadow. So everything that we had to do to go over and fix and clean, having to do with the Pisces energy, that is done. Mars is in Aries. It's ready to roll. Okay. Now we're here on Sunday. Okay. And Mars is now catching up to Neptune in Aries. So Neptune entered Aries back in late January. It was part of that Saturn-Neptune conjunction on February 20th. Big deal in terms of evolution in society. Okay. Now Mars is getting in the mix. Mars is at home in Aries, like I said. But Neptune's going to be there for the next decade and a half. Neptune is an outer planet. It's a larger influence in a bigger picture. So it's almost like Mars is stepping into Aries and saying, whoa, who are you? Because this is the first time Mars is entering Aries with Neptune in Aries. And Neptune is saying, hey, you're still Mars. This is still your home. I respect that. But we're going to do things my way for the next decade and a half. And the Neptunian way is essentially aligning the action of Mars, the impulse of Mars, with the higher realms, with the higher intentions. So it's not just these little ego-based actions, ego-based impulses. It really has to be aligned with our highest intentions. Okay, so Mars is getting a little lesson in purposeful action. Okay, intentional action. It's going to be a lesson for the next decade and a half. Okay, but this is its first time having to deal with it. So we may be experiencing we just had Mars in Pisces for about 6 weeks, and that's a Neptunian ruled sign. So it was kind of a preparation, like boot camp for Mars to get used to Neptunian energy in its sign, right? And so now, we might be feeling like this kind of mix of like our action principle might feel a little off, right? But that's okay. Okay, we're ready to do things a different way. What's also happening right now, we've got Venus in a sextile to Jupiter. Venus in Taurus, sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. This is an energy that's very different from the new moon that I'll talk about in a minute here that's coming up in Aries at the end of the week. It's all about familiarity. It's all about comfort, stability, security. So that's this Venus-Jupiter. The new moon coming up the end of this week is going to be kind of the opposite of that. Okay, so it's almost like we get a chance to like lean back and relax here on Sunday, Monday time frame. What makes us comfortable? Why does it make us comfortable? Can we expand upon our comforts, right? Do we have to be so rigid? That's that Venus in Taurus, right? Jupiter in Cancer is kind of like, well, we've gone through this emotional development in the last several months. Maybe we can go a little bit beyond that. Maybe something else is comfortable. Maybe we could change something. So it's asking us to sit in our comforts to understand why it is our comforts, okay? Then we have on Tuesday, Mercury is going to be at the last degree of Pisces just before it enters Aries. So it's about to catch up to Mars, which just entered Aries, like we said. And it's forming a sextile to Uranus in Taurus at 29 degrees. So Uranus is a couple weeks away from entering Gemini. And so Mercury's basically hitting that same spot that last week, about midweek last week. Mars was at that last degree of Pisces just before it entered Aries. The new moon on March 18th, that was a sextile to Uranus from about that same degree in the last couple degrees of Pisces with that sextile to Uranus and Taurus. So, and that was the reset button. We're resetting all that Pisces energy because we've gone through so much turmoil in Pisces with Neptune there for 14 years and Saturn there for 3 years. They finally came out here early in 2026. And then we had the Mercury Retrograde and all the personal planets moving through Pisces. So we've done a lot of the endings and we're about to open to the beginnings. Okay, so it's that last piece of that reset. Mercury enters Aries Tuesday night. Then it's going to start to catch up to Mars. So the first thing it's going to do is join Neptune in Aries, just like Mars is doing right now. And then both Mars and Mercury from Aries are going to sextile Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto was the first of the outer planets to enter its new sign and entered Aquarius. It's been there, a couple of years now, essentially, and so they're waiting patiently. And that has a lot to do with societal evolution, okay? And Aries has to do with personal impact, personal power, okay? And so personal responsibility as well. That's that whole Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries that we had in February. And so now with these personal planets moving through there, we're transferring that evolutionary and societal energy down to the personal level, to our actions, to our minds, so that we're integrating that so that we as individuals can go forth in that energy. Okay, so think about like downloading what has been already like set into motion, essentially. Okay, and so really what's happening by the time we get to the end of the week, we've got this cluster. We've got the Saturn, Neptune in early Aries, like they're still there, but we also have Mercury and Mars in early Aries. So within a few degrees of each other, they're in a little cluster, 4-planet cluster, and that whole cluster is forming a sextile to Pluto and Aquarius. So it really is about anchoring in the highest intentions in our personal actions and personal, mentality as well. So how we're thinking and acting is now aligning with the evolutionary and societal principles that are coming down upon us. And how does that fit with the societal evolution, that whole Pluto and Aquarius, right? So it's an opportunity to see how we can download the principles of the evolutionary change into our personal selves and be that player in the new world. Okay, so that's happening as we have this new moon that is going to come in on Friday the 17th. It's amazing because it's exactly conjunct Chiron. So you basically have the sun, moon, and Chiron conjunct, and it's happening while that whole cluster of 4 planets, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, and Mars, are also in Aries. So it's a massive amount of Aries energy after all this clearing we've done. We can go back to 2011 when Neptune entered Pisces, right? So you could think of it, that is the beginning of the clearing. All the way back there. When Saturn entered Pisces in 2023, it was another layer of that. And then all these personal planets this spring with the Mercury retrograde in Pisces is the final sweep of that. And now it's the new, okay? Now is the launching pad. Now is the brand new self in the new world, okay? And so whatever we've uncovered and cleaned up, it's time to put that to the side. It's time to really refocus on what we want to be here, what our true selves are here. Anchor that in. That's that Saturn and Aries, right? Anchor that in. Solidify that. Commit to it. Neptune is saying, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Okay? So that our action principle, Mars, and our minds need to be aligned with that. And they need to take into account Pluto and Aquarius over here. Okay? And to say like, wow, so society's changing. My higher self is calling me to align so that I can take action as me. So anything we were taught to be, that we think we are, that has been a big part of the erasure in this whole Pisces energy in the last decade and a half or so, okay? And now we're emerging as we truly are, who we intended to be when we came here, not any parental or teacher or otherwise influence on us, but who we are, our true authentic nature, our sovereign selves. And we might surprise ourselves here moving forward. And it's not like it's all happens in this week. This is just the jumping point. The doors are now open starting this week for the rest of life, essentially. Okay, that was the big clearing. And now it's about the big unveiling of our true selves. And if we're not clear on that, we're going to become clear on that. Okay, this is going to become very clear to everyone on a personal level over time. People are at different levels, of course, but as we move through life here, we're in these open doors. The possibilities are endless. When Saturn and Neptune conjuncted at 0 degrees Aries, that was like a blank slate point for society and evolution. And this is now our blank slate point on a personal level to integrate that evolution of society. So we'll leave it at that. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you're following me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, doesn't matter, but follow me on all those 4 if you can. And if you're looking for a personal reading, I do personal readings as well. If you want to see where all this lands, where this big Aries energy lands in your chart, what that means, you can contact me. We'll set up a reading for you. Otherwise, enjoy your week, and we will see you next week up on the hill. Take care.